You could take just the first one and overlay this is part 2.
I'm really not going to do that.
All right.
We're just going to, do
it right.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll do it. I'm in.
Welcome to Accuracy Third. I'm Rex.
I'm Beth.
And I'm D-Day.
This is the second half of our repackaging of our very first season as we cope with the mysteries of podcasting as a medium. We're going to try and be a little more brief in this introduction than we were in the first one. If you want to hear us ramble on, jump on back to episode 1 of season 1 repackaged.
Part 1
Don't
of season
listen to
1.
that. That's so bad. It's so bad.
Which, the first one, the raw one?
The raw one. The one where you guys
our
read your
real
mission
one?
statement.
No, don't go listen to that. Just
Yes,
go
listen to
gross.
this.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead and assume you already did. Who would start with episode 2 of season 1 repackage? If it's you, congratulations, you weirdo. God, I love you. Before we jump in.
Yeah, you're listening to part 2 by mistake first. If you're not driving, just open up your app, listen to the first one. You'll get through that whole thing. At the end of the first episode, you're going to pop right back here. Do that now.
We're helping.
It's actually going to be 4 seconds there.
We're helping. What are we talking about in this intro?
So for the intro of part 2 of season 1, season 5,
Everything is season 5 all the time.
Never ending season 5.
including season 1 now. Season 5 has swallowed season 1.
Oh no.
Yes, it has.
Oh God, guys, we need a Burning Man so bad so this
warned you,
season 5 doesn't swallow everything whole.
We have digested season 1, and we present it to you now in 2 parts. This part being the second part, wherein we start the episode talking about our favorite episode from season 1.
No, just overall.
Just overall.
Favorite episode, period.
Yeah, I don't have one.
We're doing great.
You're going to have to come up with one.
I can't do things like that. Other people tell me what you think my favorite episode is.
I was shocked that I couldn't remember most of the episodes. Honestly, I think my favorite episode is because I think it's the first episode that I really liked that we did. Was 1-7 was the first Xeno episode when Xeno talks about the desert mishap. I think it's the first time I felt as an editor and as someone adding background and I feel like it's probably ham-fisted if I go back and listen to it now, but it was the first time I felt like I was making a podcast that was telling a thing something I would have listened to.
I actually think you'll find it to be relatively tight. You did a really good job with this episode. And I say this because it's in this section.
Part 2, as it were.
Yeah, I think that story plus Smoke Daddy's story in this season are the absolute high points of where we started.
Which were confirmation to hey, stories about and around and through the people who make Burning Man are interesting. They're engaging. They're worth hearing. Yeah, that was part of the struggle of the whole thing for me, which was how do I know that this time is worth doing? And the Xeno episode and the Smoke Daddy episode, the first one were confirmation that it was worth doing because I felt like it was such an interesting and sweet and engaged and personal representation of a human being.
I think the one that really did it for me, because it just so completely caught me by surprise the whole way through, was Sydney. Because I had interacted with, it was Sydney who reached out to us, and I had interacted with Sydney over email and made a poor gender assumption because Sydney is a androgynous name. And I don't know. I don't know why I assumed male. But I was less surprised by Sydney's gender presentation as I was by how young presenting Sydney was when she showed up at my door. She was just more of a child than I was expecting to be interviewing that day. And then during the course of the interview, she revealed a thing that I absolutely adore about Burning Man is how complete a city it is. How it's not a party full of revelers. It's a city full of inhabitants, people and their families living together with other people in their families in a giant urban space, which is a thing that I've always adored about the Burn. And it just like added a dimension of it for me. And I say this as a person who is childless by choice. I really love people's kids at Burning Man. I love that Burning Man is an event that has kids present in places where they ought to be present.
I will say that episode changed me in that I was a little bit like, get your fucking kids out of Burning Man. Just in general, would rather not. And then...
Right? I totally get that. That's like a perspective that I've vibed with in the past.
Then I heard about these experiences and it helped. Like, it literally changed. And it changed my feeling about it. And then we had a very small child come join us on our crew through family, like 4-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. And I was blown away about how lovely and sweet and wonderful it all was. So I had 2 like double hits about like, oh, right. No, I actually think that kids at Burning Man are great. But beware from like 15 to 18 because the Amber Alerts close down the goddamn gates.
Late adolescence and Burning Man is a
complex. Know your kid.
A dangerous combination.
Kid, know your parents.
Not unsafe, just dangerous.
I'm going to say, though, like how amazing a city to shut down at the mere idea that one of our children are at risk in some way. Like, that is truly amazing.
It is.
And it is truly amazing and only the sort of thing that really flies there as a consensus as opposed to, like, when there are lockdowns in an authoritarian state. Like, we choose this. We choose that one of our values is everyone stop finding that kid.
So, D-Day, which episode of our podcast for you was transformational?
I have been thinking about that, and I am not worried that this is going to sound corny. It is honestly the next one. I don't have a great memory for the stories that are told in most of the interviews that we do.
Yeah, or like almost anything that happens to you at Burning Man either.
Right. My memory doesn't work in that way. I am like a gerbil. I am in the moment. But I am so thrilled when we have a new interview on the calendar. I am always excited and thinking about like how I am going to deconstruct that conversation that I had weeks or months ago into the episode that I'm planning to edit when it's time to edit. Like, I'm really excited to do a new episode every interview that we get.
Well, shit. Like, I was
that's so sweet.
Prepared to be like really irritated at your dodge of this prompt, but
it's a memory thing.
Yeah,
it's
man,
not a dodge thing.
I know you nailed this, and listeners, friends, participants in our cultural project, if you want to be greeted with that kind of excitement and enthusiasm as you share your stories of Burning Man and the aligned experiences, reach out to us, accuracythird@gmail.com, and be part of this. Here is part 2 of our very first season, trimmed down for your listening enjoyment. Mark!
But the point is, this is Accuracy Third, and I'm D-Day.
And I'm Rex. And today we're going to be hearing from Nathan, who was, let's call it, lead artist for Mazu Temple. But it's so much more interesting and complicated than that. And let's let Nathan tell us about it. Nathan, last year you worked on the Mazu Temple.
Correct.
How did you get involved in that project?
I had been traveling around Southeast Asia for most of the year prior and wound up in Taiwan sort of unexpectedly for about a month before coming back to the States. Shortly after coming back to the States, started up DPW season in 2014 and happened to find myself behind Dave X in line at the commissary at Burning Man.
And for our listeners who don't know, Dave X is the man responsible for all of the awesome fireworks you see every year.
Yep.
And for the other listeners who don't know, the commissary is basically the Burning Man volunteers high school cafeteria with all of the ensuing cliques and people that you see this year that you slept with last year that you really don't want to talk to this year, as you probably experienced in high school.
Pretty much. As a side note, there's a word in Russian specifically for the feeling you get when there's someone that you were very intimate with and parted on sort of awkward terms and haven't seen in a while, and then run into again unexpectedly in a public place. There's a word for that feeling in Russian.
Wow.
God, they are so good with their emotions.
Right?
If only they'd express them.
We do not do that.
No, we know what they are, and we leave them where they go.
Yeah. So anyway, I happen to be standing behind Dave X in line. You know, it's like a hot dog and tater tot kind of day, and I make some joke about mystery meat. And he replies with something about something Taiwanese street food. I kind of perk up. I'm like, I was just in Taiwan. He's like, really? I was just in Taiwan. What were you doing there? And he mentions this group that's out there called the Dream Community. And says they're a group of crazy artists out there who, a couple of them had been to Burning Man. They've been trying to bring a project out there for a while. Says I should look them up. You know, I've been, at this point, on the road kind of all over the world for 2.5 years. Wrap up the Burning Man season, no real idea what I'm doing. Send these guys an email and be like, hey, I hear you guys are looking to do a thing. And through some slightly choppy English, I'm given to understand that they will fly me out there, that they are looking for a consultant, is how I read the situation, to help them navigate Burning Man bureaucracy. Like, they have a plan, a piece they want to make. And I'm like, well, great. That gets me across the Pacific, and I'll hang out for a month, get their letter of intent into the art department, and be on my merry way. Mm-hmm. So I show up in December of 2014 and meet with them, and, you know, so tell me about your plan. What can I do to help you make this thing happen? And they look at me and they say, so tell us about your plan.
They weren't hiring you as a consultant. They wanted you to be the artist.
Right. Which I discovered upon arriving.
They had nothing at all. No concept.
All they had was they wanted something involving the goddess Mazu. They saw her as this icon of Taiwanese culture, and they wanted to, and Asian culture at large. As an aside, to explain to the listeners at home, Mazu was a mortal girl in Fujian province around 962 AD, I believe, living on a coastal village, and everyone there made their living from the sea. The stories go that they didn't have lighthouses or anything like that, so she would actually wear this bright red dress and stand on the cliff as like a signal to guide people back home. And died in a storm swimming out to sea trying to rescue her father from a crashed fishing boat. And so basically was sort of, kind of made a saint in some ways. Uh-huh. She's worshipped by something like 50 million people in 26 countries.
Huh.
Wow.
I should double check my numbers on that, but it's a large number.
You don't have to.
The name of this podcast is Accuracy Third.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, good.
We've already gotten way more accuracy in like the last 2 or 3 minutes than we've had in any of our previous episodes.
Yeah, it was a really strange journey. So I went to, basically they said, okay, well, something Mazu, something Burning Man. Mm-hmm. And their main gig at Dream Community, they do very small scale installation art on their property, essentially. Just sort of on the outskirts of Taipei. But their main gig are these big parades they do, like with floats and things like that. And they're like, we want to do this thing, but we want it to be really big at Burning Man. And was like, well, Burning Man doesn't really support performance art. That like, if you want to bring that there, go for it. But that's not really anything that you're going to interact with the org about. You're not going to have any support. But what they do support is installation art. So if you want an installation as a stage for your performance, I'll make you one. They're like, great, do that. So I
did they have funding?
Communication throughout the entire project with them was, shall we say, fraught with challenges.
Oh, I can imagine.
No one there had English as a first language. I speak some Mandarin, which helped, but I was not fluent enough to conduct full conversations in Mandarin either. So we each spoke about 1.5 languages. All that being said, when we started off, I visited some Mazu temples to kind of get a feel for it. I did some research, came up with a design, some concept art. And they're like, yeah, great. We're doing that. Sounds awesome. And so I was like, okay, cool. So, you've got your letter of intent in. You guys got this, right? They're like, no. Oh, you're doing this. I was like, so I was planning on leaving here. Okay. All right. And so I was like, okay, well then who am I working with? Because they have some people on site, but none of them are really who I would pick to do anything like this. They do a lot of small scale soft arts.
Yeah, float building.
Yeah.
Not installation building.
Right. And so they're, well, pick a team. You work with people. And I was like, all right. So I put a call out on the DPW list. And suddenly this just, torrent of people being like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. You'll fly me out to Taiwan to work on this? Okay, I'm in. Starts coming in, and I end up turning into a one-man HR team for a few weeks. End up putting together a really talented team, including people who've worked on several other temples in the past. Kiwi, who was the lead for the Temple of Transition in 2011, came on as an architect. Charlie, who had spent a number of years in DPW and had worked on the temple in 2009, as well as a lot of other large-scale installation art, and so on. There's a amazing team. I got artists and welders and costume designer and all sorts of people. We're basically making it this big thing.
And how many people did you end up flying out for this?
Let's see. The core of us was about 9 or 10 of us altogether. The whole thing ended up being like 5.5 months of planning and design, 3.5 months of build on site at the generator in Reno, about 2.5 weeks to set up on site, with including all of the cleanup, tear down, tying up of loose ends. It was a year of my life, start to finish.
And how much of the construction and the fabrication and stuff was done in Taiwan? Was any of it?
None of it.
Just the planning.
Yeah. And the Taiwanese crew brought out, if you were there and you saw those 2 big statues that were sort of like foam kind of demon-looking statues. So those are actually figures from Mazu's mythology, Qian Li Yan and Shen Feng Er, which translate as 1,000-mile eyes and ears hear the wind, something like that. And basically the story goes, so Mazu was, first she was kind of sainted, in this kind of sort of quasi St. Christopher capacity, protector of travelers, but primarily ocean-going travelers. And then as sometimes happens, she sort of, rose in the ranks and was posthumously deified. Though not really considered a deity of any particular religion, and she's kind of her own thing. The Buddhists and Taoists have both tried to absorb her. But in any case, part of the story goes that in her status as immortal protector, these 2 demon generals both fall in love with her. And her response, which is wonderfully badass, was basically like, okay, if you can beat me in a fight, I'm yours. If not, you're mine. And it trounces them both soundly, and then they basically pledge to be her eternal bodyguards. So she's always found flanked by these 2 demons. So that's what those statues were. Those were made by actually a Balinese wood carving team that sort of is like artist in residence at Dream Community in Taiwan.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Though designed by my friend John Bastard.
And then that's shipped out here?
Yeah. The logistics on this entire thing were a giant clusterfuck.
And just the tension of waiting for those crates to arrive and, opening them to see how they fared going across the Pacific, however they got to you. That would be maddening.
And how much logistical and administrative support did you get? Were you running this whole project? Wow. They were essentially just funding it.
Yes, often not even that. How to put it? The initial arrangement had been something like, okay, you guys don't have experience building anything in the desert, building anything this scale. You're hiring me to be the project manager. so I have authority to do these things. You're giving me the budget, and I'm running design decisions by you, but once the design is locked in and approved by the org, then I have a green light to go, and as long as I stick to budget, everything's fine. That seemed to be a reasonable way of reading that situation. 2 or 3 times, at least 2 times that I can recall, after the letter of intent was submitted and approved, they called me in for radical design changes. Because in their mind, it was all still a work in progress. It was all just spitballing still. Whereas I'm like, what?
We gotta buy wood, man.
Yeah. That, and if we want to get support from Burning Man, we have to do the thing that we told them we were going to do, that they said, yes, we'll give you money for that. If we do a different thing, we don't get that money. Or the logistical support, or the free tickets, or any of these things. Dream Community was very much used to operating on their timeline, on their turf, where they can kind of just be like, yes, do this thing. And then come back a month later when you're like 80% out. Like, no, I meant something else.
Yeah, that's artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're not artists is the thing. They import all their artists.
Oh, so they're really just like a patron organization.
Kind of. They're what I discovered with enough time out there was that they're basically they're a company that does value-added real estate development that's sort of billing itself as an artist organization.
Huh.
Like, the guy behind it all is a real estate developer who builds these apartment buildings and then has artists come out and, live in the unfinished apartments and do installation pieces that he gives them, sort of a modest stipend for. And then he finishes out the apartments and sells them and, retains all of the rights and everything.
Wow.
And, he was using, it came out much later that he was using Mazu as leverage to get himself to the table with these big Chinese real estate developers and all these things.
Well, that's a little disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a word for it.
I mean, it's not quite Belgian waffle in the car ad disappointing, but it's pretty disappointing.
Yeah.
Wait, how was Belgian waffle?
The Belgian waffle, Urconia, was featured in an Audi ad.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
So you've flown to Taiwan. You've planned out this entire project for this shadowy moneyed organization.
You've been baited and switched at least twice.
Oh yeah.
You and your team have returned to Nevada and spent 3 months in Reno constructing this thing.
3 months in Nevada at the generator, which was kind enough to give us an enormous amount of space and use of their shop for free, essentially. For those who are not familiar with the generator, is a makerspace out of Sparks, technically, but right next door to Reno. But it's where the pier and the ship were built in, I believe, 11 and 12. Embrace in 2014, and then where they're currently working on the Space Whale. Yes, sort of a nautical theme. Whale. Yeah.
Trying to think of how that feeds into the whole enlightenment theme of this year too, and
you don't find space whales enlightening? how much inappropriate clockwork are we going to see this year? Totally steampunked out 2 centuries ahead. Not going to see any wooden gears.
We might.
We'll see a few.
But just 1 gear at a time. Get any wood out there, it'll warp so badly, teeth won't lock.
It doesn't have to really be wood. It just has to look like wood.
Okay.
We can 3D print it and then, laminate it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like shelf paper. Wood veneering.
So once you got it all constructed in Reno, there's a whole nother adventure ahead of you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we were set to head out to Playa with our 6 or 7 semi-loads of stuff at that point. Because we built the whole thing like a kit. So it was all pieces that, there wasn't enough space in the generator, despite the enormous amount that we had, to actually put the whole thing together.
Right.
So we had to do it all in pieces and do a really, really good job of double checking that everything would fit together. And we're mostly correct. So we're set to head out on the 15th or so. I'm like, okay, I want to be there first. I need to find the art department. I need to figure out where we are and be there to kind of guide in these shipments as they come so that they're not dithering around and we can kind of get this going, because however much time we have is not going to be enough. Nothing ever goes to plan on Playa, or takes as long as you think it will. And so we have a bunch of vehicles that we've procured through various means between people's personals and some, trailers and RVs that we've rented for the crew. And we have one that we picked up for $1,000 that was supposed to be the kitchen for everything. Andy, who was sort of our camp manager, had done a fantastic job of like putting in counters and found, sourced all of these appliances, and it was a really good kitchen. Plus there was food for 2 weeks on this thing, and set it up with a generator to run, to keep the freezers going and all that. I was originally going to drive that out, so all of my stuff was in there. And when I say all of my stuff, like I'd been on the road for about 3 years. So all of my stuff was my backpack and a bin, and that was about everything I owned. That's all loaded up, and the thing won't start. And I'm like, well, okay, I got to get going. Find the mechanic, work this out. I'm going to take a different vehicle. And I grabbed my little shoulder bag. Beautiful ride out to Playa, just as the sun's coming up. Get there for dawn with Chelsea, who was my pyro lead. Find our spot and kind of start getting things situated. And, the rest of people who were like, yeah, we'll be there in a couple hours. We'll be right behind you. 5, 6, 7 hours go by. Finally, they show up early evening without the kitchen trailer. And apparently it had these persistent, ongoing engine issues. It had died like 3 or 4 times. They tried pushing it. They tried pulling it. It finally limped it into Willie's yard in Gerlach and left it there to come get tools and reinforcements from Playa and head back out. But because it had all of this frozen food and frozen meat in it, they're like, well, let's leave it with one of the generators running. That's what it's designed to do. Mm-hmm. Right as they're relaying this story to me, the staff truck comes up with Chaos.
Okay, everyone. Nathan just mentioned a guy named Chaos, and that guy just happens to run the Black Rock City Heavy Equipment and Transpo, or HEAT, team. HEAT deploys big construction equipment to everyone on Playa, whether you're a giant art project or one of Burning Man's departments. Chaos is the spider in the center of the web in charge of all of that. And now that you know who he is, back to the story.
Chaos runs the heavy equipment department. And he's like, so was that your trailer in Gerlach? I was like, that's an interesting use of the word was. Apparently, about 10 minutes after they'd left, it caught fire and burned to the ground. With everything in it.
Boy. Wow.
And the guy who had been driving it and who had made the decision to leave it, it was his first time at Burning Man, his first time on Playa, and he was Canadian. He was just crippled with guilt. Literally, I don't think I've ever seen anyone that useless from being sorry. And I was like, I actually need you to do work. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. Early Man was coming up.
Hi, friends. Rex here. You may be wondering to yourself, what is Early Burn? Perhaps you've never heard of this before. Early Burn is a celebration for the staff and crew that put Burning Man together, held the week before the gate opens. All the various teams that work hard, building the roads, building the shade, building the infrastructure, digging power trenches, etc., build wooden effigies symbolizing what their department does, stuff them full of accelerants, fireworks, and other wildly inappropriate material, and light them on fire while reveling in front of them. This eventually, inevitably leads to running from the hot, exploding fire, squealing in delight.
This is how the folks that build Burning Man celebrate building Burning Man.
And so I recruited him and Andy, who had actually built out the trailer, to take some spare plywood, to take a couple hours for, a few nights, and make an effigy of the van, of the trailer, to go burn on purpose at Early Man. Spray painted Burning Van 2015 on it. After that, everything was fine.
Oh, that's some magical Playa catharsis right there. I love that.
Oh, it was so good.
So what did you guys do without kitchen or food for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
We managed to actually pull together a really amazingly supportive community very quickly. Between all the people who had been sort of following along our fundraising and social media, there was a quick call out of like, holy shit, this just happened. There was about a bunch of people who were kind of coming in the second wave who were still in Reno, who were able to take donations, able to buy, raise some funds and buy some extra food. But there was also an enormous outpouring of support from all of our friends on staff. Mm-hmm. Like the next day, some friends of mine from Gate rolled up with a truck, and the truck bed was just full of Colexodus food.
Colexodus is something that pretty much everybody who attends Burning Man knows about. It's a fixture of the Exodus experience. It's that group of DPW that sits in the line, collecting your food that you're not going to take home with you.
I just learned what Calexodus is yesterday. I've never left on Monday during the big parade out the door.
Which is kind of a shame because Exodus is one of those touchstone experiences of Burning Man. D-Day, you're kind of missing out. You get to sit in your car in the sun, all tired and bored all day long. Calexodus collects sealed, canned, shelf-stable food. They're not interested in your water. They're not interested in your drugs.
They are interested in your open containers of liquor, which can get you thrown in the hoosgow if you get caught speeding on the way home.
That's not actually true. They don't want your open containers of liquor. They'll take them, but they don't want them. Finish your own booze.
Completely set on, granola bowls and mac and cheese and, all this stuff. Like we were fine. I had care packages coming in almost daily for me from people who were like, holy shit, Nathan lost stuff. I don't know if you know Muse, but she's part of the office staff. She works in legal, I think. And she suffered a house fire where she lost almost everything she owned some years ago. And she's like, I don't want to see that happen to my friend. And basically ordered me to set up an Amazon wish list of like the stuff that I'd lost personally and, passed it around the office. And by the time I left Playa, I had almost more stuff than I went on Playa with. It was kind of incredible. It was one of the...
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's wonderfully sweet.
Yeah, I have the best friends ever. I feel like I don't think I could ever thank everybody enough. My friend Seth heard that I lost my camera among the things that were out there. And like he'd stopped going to Burning Man in 2001. And he came out for Early Man just to give me his old camera, which was this much nicer one than I had. It was this big old DSLR. My friend Ayumi, she was coming out from Tokyo. She runs one of the Japanese burn camps called Camp Nuclear Disaster. And she heard that I had lost the knife and comes out and hands me this hand-forged ninja toe.
Wow. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, no, that's the most baller knife on Playa.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like stunned and speechless pretty much constantly. I lost a lot of my medical gear, a lot of my Western first aid kit. I was basically the ranking medic from Azu among my 12 hats, plus all of my acupuncture gear. And by the time I left, I had basically a fully stocked paramedic duffel bag and a fully stocked acupuncture kit. It was incredible. For everything that was frustrating or stressful or went wrong about that entire debacle, all of the circumstances around which everyone came out of the woodwork to be supportive for myself and my crew will always have a soft spot in my heart. I think we got about 90% of what I wanted, and that I think I'm the only one that was really killed by that 10%. But it was still pretty.
90% for a Burning Man project is unheard of.
It was also my first art project.
There's got to be a word for how close you didn't get to what you wanted to begin with.
I'm pretty sure that's in the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows.
Yeah, I know that. I know that if it's a bottle of liquor, it's called the ullage.
The ullage.
Yeah, the empty space in that bottle of whiskey is the ullage.
Oh,
fascinating! I just learned a new word. I got a nice scar here on my hand. I gotta say it was a dragon bite. The 8 dragons that lined the perimeter of the roof drew blood every fucking day that we worked on them.
I believe it. They were sharp as fuck.
Yeah. I was seriously considering at one point just renaming the whole thing the Temple of Tetanus.
So it started 3 or 4 years ago. I stopped in the Goodwill in Reno on my way to the Playa, and I saw this Barbie pink prom dress, and I want it so bad. I just wanted it so bad. I still have the dress. It is now spray painted, graffitied, and chopped up in crazy directions. And kind of ridiculous, but it's my favorite. And they wanted like $25 or $26 for it. And I was like, I don't know if I can do it. And then the guy was like, who was at the register, he's like, you should really get that dress. It was made for you. And I was like, yeah, I think so. My name is Barbie. And he's like, I'm going to give it to you for the pound price. It's going to be like $2. And so I bought it. Nice. And I went out.
That's great.
And I learned some very important things about ball gowns. A, when you're dressed fancy, people are nicer to you. B, if you don't like to be touched, wearing big clothing works really well because it's like this bear tactic. Like you appear bigger than you are, and then people don't want to touch you.
Well, you've got all that taffeta underneath it, and like people have to lean in awkwardly to hug you.
And also, it creates a formal interaction.
Right.
I am a very old school person in the way that I interact. I like wit, I like quips, but I don't want some guy to come up to me and go, hey girl, what you doing tonight? Fuck that. No, I don't want that. I want people to treat me courteously. It doesn't even have to be like a lady.
Holla back, mama.
You can get away with it. And the other thing is you can put insane amounts of layers under a ball gown without anybody knowing, and you still look good.
So how many ball gowns do you bring with you on average?
Last year, I brought 20.
That was Barbie telling us exactly why you never find her on Playa not wearing an evening gown. A ball gown, an evening gown. So what do we got going on today, Rex?
Well, D-Day, today on Accuracy Third, we have our very first ever themed show. We're going to be hearing 3 stories from 3 different voices, all about first times at Burning Man.
You're going to hear from Nathan, who you all heard from last episode. And if you haven't heard last episode, go listen to that right now. Then come back, listen to this. We'll also be hearing more from Barbie and from our friend Gummy Bear.
Now, this thematic presentation is something we've always been aiming for. The more participation we get from you,
The more we can do
participants.
this. Yeah, so participate. Send us your stories. Tell us your ideas. Think of all the interesting things that have happened to you on Playa. And more importantly, tell them to us.
You can share your stories on accuracythird.com. You can share them by recording them. You can share them by letting us interview you. You can just type something up and we'll read it. It doesn't matter. Get your voice on our podcast. And now, enjoy these 3 voices.
Hi. So the first year I went to Burning Man, either 2010 or 2011, can't remember, I caught mono on the way down.
You noticed mono on the way down. Somebody tossed you some mono a week before, a couple days before.
It's actually not confirmed it was mono. It's just showed all the symptoms of being mono. To this day, we don't actually know what it was, except that it was not strep throat. And I had 101-degree fever for 8 days and 104-degree fever for 2.
Yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, that fever for too long just kills you.
I traveled out from New York City, and that was the most insane thing in the world. Basically, we got access to a next to free motorhome if we drove it out there.
Something you had to acquire in Reno?
No, it was literally like in Connecticut somewhere.
Oh, so you drove cross country
Yes.
in a motorhome?
Yes.
Like 7 miles a gallon.
Yeah. And our driver, are we allowed to swear on here?
You're
Oh,
allowed
shit,
to say
yeah,
whatever
this
you
is the
want. This is
internet.
the
Oh,
inter-
okay.
goddamn
I don't know.
nuts.
Our driver was the biggest asshole that ever was.
I first became aware of it, perhaps surprisingly, because of a girl that I was dating at the time who had just started going, a year before, the 2 years before that, I think. And one of the documentaries about Burning Man was coming out. I don't actually remember what it was called. But I totally had that moment after watching it of feeling intensely homesick for a place I'd never been, which there's actually a Welsh word for, haraeth, which is the longing or homesickness for a place that you can never return to and perhaps might never exist.
Oh, that's nice.
So anyway, I had this intense feeling, and we had a small camp of friends that went, and one of them bought a 1967 California Department of Corrections bus, stripped out the inside, carpeted it, put like some couches, bed in the back, little kitchenette, strapped a bunch of shit to the top, got like 2.5 miles a gallon, and broke down 5 times on the way, coming over from San Francisco. It was amazing.
When you got in the car on the way down to Burning Man, you were already feeling a little under the weather?
Honestly, I can't actually tell you because we hadn't slept more than 4 hours in weeks. I mean, who knows? I could have been sick for a week and not known because it was crush mode. And we had also hit a deer on the way.
Yeah, just above Cedarville. That was exciting. In the pitch black night.
I barely remember it. I know that we didn't stop. We just kept going.
But we did get to see the country. We got to go to like ghost towns and like also sleeping over, we would just break laws. Like we'd just park and sleep and didn't care. Like,
Sure, there's a lot of empty space in the middle of this country where you can just kind of park and there's no one to care.
They shuffle you along, you just go.
Off to the next county full of cornfields.
The only thing that I have to say is like we started using our creative bathroom tactics before we even got to the playa. I found out that
lot
the
of
pee
empty
funnel
stretches.
did not work for me personally.
So did you try one of the Playa Tech pee funnels when you got to Playa?
No,
Have you seen them?
No, that sounds terrifying.
They're just a plastic Dixie cup with a little piece of
Tubing.
the
Clear
tubing,
tubing.
yeah, cocked into the bottom of it.
You said cock.
It's going to be this sort of recording session.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Fair enough.
So across the country, you came in an RV,
Yes, and
having
we
little mini adventures the whole way.
basically, I'm in the car with this gorgeous girl, and she and I have become friends. And asshole driver he's been eyeing her forever. She does not want him to touch her with a 10-foot pole. So at night, it gets really hot in the motorhome because we don't have air conditioning. She took off a part of her clothing, and he was like, I'm going to jump into bed with her right now. So she starts like screaming. By the way, we're in Yellowstone National Park.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay. First of all, remember, I'm 6 feet. All right. My dreads out on playa make me 6'4". She's like flipping out. She has been assaulted. She goes and gets like the rangers in Yellowstone National Park. And she's like, I can't go one more night with this lunatic. And I'm like, great. Me neither. So I'm carrying like a 50-pound battery, okay, in the RV because I have sleep apnea and I travel with Camp Mobility because we provide medical outlets for medical fridges, for sleep apnea machines, for oxygen tanks, basically anyone with any type of anything that needs to be plugged in for a medical purpose is what we're all about and what we provide when we come to Playa. I was toting a 50-pound battery with its own suitcase. I was plugging my machine into that every night. So I have a Playa CPAP and I have a real life CPAP.
That's smart.
Yep.
Never take anything out that you expect to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, I soak the bejesus out of that thing when it gets home. Like, I can't lift my bag down the stairs of the RV, you guys. So the Rangers are like, we'll get it. Do you guys watch Criminal Minds?
No.
There's a guy in there who's like notorious for kicking down doors. These Rangers shamarmored their way into our RV, grabbed my suitcase with like one arm, like grab her stuff, and they drive us out of Yellowstone to Cody, Wyoming, which is like 2 hours away, where we're put up in the Buffalo Bill Hotel.
Oh, I've been to Cody very briefly. Because
Yes.
that's as much time as you can spend in Cody.
My dad is on the phone with us. He was like, get her to safety. You're bigger than she. I'm bigger than everybody. We bonded, that's for sure. Like, we had history instantly. You know, no, we didn't need a helicopter, but we had the next best thing.
Yeah, it's not good to stay around somebody who's not reading those
Yeah.
no signals in the way that
Yeah.
people who are healthy would.
Yeah, so you don't want to be with people who don't have a real firm grasp of consent.
The guy who's in charge of our camp got us 2 seats in a vehicle going to Playa, and that's all we needed. We jumped into a car with all of our stuff. Then we ran into the storm.
So we get to Playa, and we went and I got ushered into a truck, and then I went to Playa del Fuego, which is my old camp. And at that point, I was pretty sick. I got tricycled to the Death Guild one day because I have a bunch of friends there, and they have a surprisingly or not surprisingly large amount of doctors and nurses in that camp. Mm-hmm. And so they were kind of doing some first aid.
It's not really that surprising that they have so many medical professionals there. Like all of the injuries that happen in Thunderdome. Like, why wouldn't you bring doctors with you? We had a nurse camp with us one year, not because our installation was any sort of dangerous thing, but because when you're hungover, quite possibly the greatest thing to have happen when you wake up is have somebody stick you with some saline.
Oh, and a B12 shot.
Oh, I
It's
want
instant
that.
happy.
It is, like, you don't have to drink your thirst away. You get these waves of, like, I don't want to say health running through you because that was
Waves of
certainly
recovery.
Yeah, absolutely recovery. You're not in a state of health out there, even if you haven't gone on a bender.
By the time they figured out it wasn't strep, they had sent me to Reno, but this is 4 days later because I'm allergic to most antibiotics, and the antibiotics I can take aren't carried on Playa. And I don't remember how we got the entry and exit passes. That's all a blur. But I do remember getting about halfway to Reno and then being informed by the driver who told me he was sober that he was not actually sober.
Oh, no.
And he was in an altered state.
Was this a driver that you knew, or was this just some ride you caught?
No, this was a friend of mine.
Wow, that's somehow shittier. Consent is important.
The doctors in Reno were actually really cool and put me on hydrocodone cough syrup, which I was not expecting, seeing as I came from Burning Man. The drive back was really scary. I think at one point he was driving on the other side, the opposite side of the road.
Oh, so he was fairly severely altered.
Yeah, it didn't kick in really bad until we were coming back. And then with it being night and what he was altered on.
The kind of thing that alters you and kicks in several hours later.
Or climaxes 7 hours later.
Those of you who are familiar with the substances that are recreationally consumed at Burning Man can suss out for yourself what Sir might have taken.
I'm glad you're okay. Don't do that at home, kids. That's dumb as shit.
I'm really bad at going to parties. If you hand me a free drink and say, go talk to some people, I'm just going to be like, oh, God, do I have to?
I still get the drink, right?
Yeah. But you put me behind a bar or give me a job to do, and I'm all set. Mm-hmm. That's why I became a bartender. Yeah, I think I made it like 2 days into my first Burning Man, and I was like, I need something to do. And I knew a bunch of the folks from Cafe from the previous life of having worked at the Ren Fair. And a lot of Cafe was started by people who got bored with Ren Fair. I met Graham, who you may know as Hippie Killer, because I showed up to barista, for his like a 7 to 11 shift. I think he was doing 11 to 3. He had the graveyard shift. And like no one showed up for him. He had like one guy.
Oh, that
for his
used to
entire
happen
group.
so often on those late at night shifts.
Oh, yeah. And so I just stayed and worked a double. I was like, well, fuck it. You need help. And they kept being like, you keep showing up on time and sober. Can we pay you? Do you want to be a manager?
Do you mind keep doing your work and more work? We'll give you more work.
Yeah.
So you started volunteering your very first year.
I've never not worked. Yeah, they just kind of handed me the grid in 2013, I think.
That's insane.
Now
Yeah.
was, I don't want to call it electrical engineering, but rough and tumble electrical engineering part of your skill set before you started volunteering with DPW?
No, I learned it all on site.
That's awesome.
Burning Man is a wonderful place to fail.
It
really
is.
true.
You will learn like a solid third of a skill working at Burning Man.
Yeah. But often enough to get your foot in the door somewhere that you can actually start a job at it
Yeah.
where you couldn't have with zero experience. Yeah.
Nobody was going to let me manage like 165 people off Playa. Just out of the, like, no, because I can. It was like, what do you mean you can? It's like, I do plays, work with abused kids. Like, I can totally manage people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that only works at your Burning Man interview.
It's really true. That's one of the things I love about it.
So your parents go to Burning Man.
My dad, I took him last year.
How was that for you?
He and Freddie Mercury have the same birthday in the same year, so they're exactly the same age if Freddie were still with us. I always felt like my dad would have a really great time at Burning Man, and the man burns on Freddie/Dad's birthday, September 5th. So I was like, it's like the biggest party ever. It's the greatest idea for anyone's birthday because, like, look how many people go. And anyway, so we got, he worked really hard last year with his friend, and they got themselves there last year, and their virgin burn was celebrated at 69 years old.
That's awesome. How much did you facilitate their going? Did you just put the bug in his ear and he did it on his own?
Okay, so what I would do is, like, I would make YouTube videos, like, look, guys, it's really easy. And I'd like pack one bag. And I'd be like, look, we're almost done. You can do this too. And by the time I get
You're a
home,
filthy liar.
and by the time I get home, we'll be packed and ready to go to Burning Man. So just call and get in a U-Haul and I'll be on the next flight out to California. So I was just doing it to be like, hey, dad, hey, dad, hey, dad. And like, it worked.
And what was his experience like?
A story that I think he'd really be okay with me telling. So we are camped right next to the Levin oven.
Okay.
Okay, somebody had a really good idea. Flatbread, topless hot chicks. We literally shared a wall, a fictional wall, with the Levin oven. And our neighbor was a girl, and she was a moaner. Like she was. And let me tell you, you cross a line when you're in your tent, when your best friend's in the tent next to you, and your dad's in the third tent, and you're all hearing, simultaneously forever. And it's like when it's done, you like take the zipper off your tent and you're like, is it free to come out yet? Because my dad and I just had the weird thing.
See, I think that if they're going to put that into the community should be accepting of it. And I like to shout things like, yeah, get it.
Totally.
That's when you pull up your camp chair, you crack a beer, you face their tent, and you just enjoy the show.
So guess what my
sitting
dad
around the
started
radio.
doing?
They were tailgating the boning.
We were provided with all you can eat, playa version of all you can eat. So that's like 1 bite a day of flatbread because we shared the wall. So we got flatbread all the time. So I didn't mind hearing sex noises if it meant I'd get pesto, onion, cheesy, heavy, melty, gooey,
That's
yummy.
fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, you can have all the sex you want and be loud.
Man, the only food camp I ever camped next to was the Gut Hut.
Wow, what was the...
That sounds so nasty.
Is that like pork rinds? All pork rinds?
Oh, God,
only
I
pork rinds?
wish it was pork rinds. It was pork uterus.
Shut up.
Oh, yeah. It was a little chewy. It would really could have used some deep frying. And the pork brains were tasty, but could have used some...
Salt.
No, they could have used a pass through a sieve to get the stringy bits out.
Oh, that's bleak.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah, no, they would go to the Chinese grocer and pick the creepiest things that they could buy and bring them out to Playa.
Oh, my God.
And serve them.
My
They were
second-
the first camp to be shut down by the Nevada Health Department.
Thank God.
Buy that. I'm going to start bringing sulfa drugs in my first aid kit.
That's smart.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
allergic to. That's what they have. They have sulfa.
They have sulfa drugs?
yeah.
Holy shit.
They have, because I'm allergic to penicillin, sulfa, and Sequor. The thing with being allergic to antibiotics, in most people's cases, it's from overuse. So for me, I had strep throat for a very long period of time when I was little.
Right.
And because I was in an age where they didn't want to take my tonsils out, they just kept switching the antibiotics. But my body was like, no, you motherfuckers, just cut the tonsils out, and kept developing these things from overuse of antibiotics.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm allergic to a lot of pharmaceutical things.
Barbie, were you one of those kids that insisted on putting your mouth right on the drinking fountain?
I had the worst oral fixations when I was little. I think my parents covered everything in syrup of Ipecac to get me to stop putting things in my mouth.
Wow. Why do you go?
We should be asking that to people more.
I'm working on it.
I think the question is, why do you still go?
Yeah, sure. What keeps you going?
I mean, the first 2 years I went out were kind of rough. The relationship with the woman I was going out with was rocky.
It's a hard place for a relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it'll put you through paces.
I was really not super thrilled about the event just because it all kind of blurred together. It was all just a lump of feeling gross. And it was the temple. It was the temple in the way that I saw people interacting with it. The memory that sort of encapsulates the whole thing for me is when the Temple of Stars burned. I remember I was, probably right about 6 o'clock and showed up early. We all just sort of sat around, and I didn't really know why we were there. I thought the temple was beautiful, but I didn't really know what to expect.
Was this your first?
Yeah, that was my first year. So that was David Best's Temple of Stars. It was almost like a quarter-mile long. It was,
yeah. That was a beautiful temple.
Yeah, it was amazing. That was the year that someone had these 2 mylar kites on a wire and were basically flying the kites, and they were, aloft on the thermals from the burning temple and reflecting the light back down on the crowd. It was gorgeous. But the wind shifted. It had been really still. And the embers were just going straight up, and then suddenly the wind shifted right about the time the first big rush of embers started coming down. And people were just getting shit falling on them, literally raining fire from the sky. And you could feel this animal tension building to panic and just emanating through the mob. A crowd on the verge of turning into a mob. And I feel like most of the places, that's just what would have happened. People would have gotten stampeded. People were just like, fuck it, every man for yourself. And I watched people, brushing embers out of strangers' hair and batting things out of the way and deliberately calming each other down. And I felt everything change. And suddenly we were all just there, and we were like, okay, this is what we're doing now. And then it was fine. And I didn't think I'd ever see that anywhere else.
My first year, the man was still on hay bales, and they didn't really do a perimeter like they do now because there was like 14 rangers.
What year is this?
99.
Nice.
So the crowd was pressed in much tighter than it is these days. And there was this project around the man called the Impotence Overcompensation Project, which was just 4 giant kerosene jets that shot towers of flame 30 feet in the air. Pretty cool. They were in the crowd. The perimeter was not back behind them.
And they didn't have fence around it because it was
And-
back when Burning Man was real.
Yeah. And they were going off as we waited for the man to burn in the crowd. Bits of not quite burned kerosene were dripping down on us. And every time they went off, there was this big radiant wave of heat. And we were standing, pressed chest to back, and we'd all lean together away from the heat.
Oh, Burning Man.
That was pretty animal panicky.
Yeah.
And an unrepeatable, like, human moment.
So you spent your entire first Burning Man sick and suffering. With that as your first experience,
What made you come back?
yeah.
I left the camp one other time. It's Friday. At that point, I had been in my tent for like 7 days, and I was about to lose my shit. And I remember walking out onto the playa, and it was the middle of a whiteout, and just feeling like the desert was washing me clean. And to go back, so before Burning Man, not only had I physically pushed myself as far as I could, I had also made a decision about a month and a half, 2 months before that, to let go of my pain. And because I used to identify with these strengths that I had acquired through going through struggle. Like, I am strong because I did this and I conquered that. But in doing so, I was still holding on to all this pain. So I made this decision to stop identifying with these things and instead to identify with positive aspects of myself. Say, I'm creative and I'm intelligent and I process quickly. But when I got mono, I felt like I was spiritually letting go of like 23 years of anguish. And so I'm walking out onto the desert, I'm walking to the temple, and I haven't left camp, and I've been fever delirious for days, like sober, seeing shit. And I feel this sand just washing over me. It's like probably to this day one of the worst whiteouts I've ever seen. You couldn't see more than a foot in front of you. And just feeling like it's cleaning my soul. And then I made it to Crystal Method for maybe like 45 minutes. And I just sat. I just sat and soaked up the music.
So rather than identifying with it, making your pain the core of who you were finally processing through it.
Yep, exactly.
And is that what brought you back to Burning Man? Was it that
Relieving
experience?
yourself of that burden.
I mean, I'm a glutton for punishment. And so it's like with Burning Man, like, yeah, I came and it totally kicked my ass. It won. It totally won. I didn't like die, but I got close. But I'm not gonna stop at that point. I'm gonna go back. And then I'm gonna volunteer because that's what you do. You get up, you pick your shit up, and you fucking kill it.
When you stumble, don't be afraid to break down. You know sometimes you gotta break down by the side of the road. Break down and love life from the gutter. Break down watching the stars go. Whoa, break down. You know sometimes you gotta break down and sing out loud. Break down and love life from the gutter. Break down before the lights go out. Before the lights go out.
Fuck your transformation. And to be clear, I never said that Burning Man was transformative. I said that I was transforming during Burning Man.
Now, can we get you to say that Burning Man was transformative?
No, I just got into a car accident that was life-changing. Illnesses and injuries, no matter where they take place, if they are impactual, they're going to be impactual. And the setting is just part of the facilitation of the process.
So really what we're getting at here is the fact that it is impossible to go to Burning Man without sustaining some degree of injury that makes Burning Man inherently transformative.
At the very least, your cuticles are going to split. Right? Like
Yeah.
You're going to twist your ankle.
Your hands show it for weeks.
You really want me to say? You're really fishing for me to say Burning Man was transformative.
Hey, did you just hear that Barbie said that Burning Man was transformative for her?
Can you edit that out, Beth?
The years they sit heavy, the minutes ride fast. You could cut through this night like a knife. Gray hours of November are hard to remember when weather is the measure of life.
1, 2, 3 accuracy third. 1, 2 accuracy third. That would make more sense. Hi Rex.
Hi, D-Day.
What do we got going on today?
Well, today we have Drunk Beth with us in studio. Hi, Beth.
But I'm not with you.
You are with me. I'm looking at you.
No, but I mean, when you introduce this episode, I'm not with you guys.
The three of us can just talk without introducing Drunk Beth. Hi, it's D-Day Rex and Drunk Beth, and we can talk about Xeno in the episode, and then we can go into the episode.
Yeah, I think we've set it up in previous episodes where it's pretty clear that we're recording the intro separately.
We can record whatever you want. I'm going to cut it together the way I want to.
Love that.
I love
Yeah.
you, Beth.
But why don't you guys tell me about Xeno? I met him. He seemed kind of cute. He seemed kind of crazy. He seemed really clean cut for as big of a scumbag as he sounds like after listening to hours and hours of his stories.
So the picture that will go along with this episode, and I believe you've seen it already, is Xeno circa 2003, 2004 with a Trihawk. The original Xeno that I met had a mohawk spiked up as high as he could spike it with his hands.
I haven't met Relay, who was also with him when you guys recorded this. They're partners. He's been volunteering in DPW, and she volunteers in DPW and
Initially, it was ESD.
ESD.
And now
What does
she-
ESD stand for?
Emergency Services Division.
Okay.
Or is it department?
Division or department. There are medics, there are paramedics.
And also the fire
nurses.
service.
Yeah. So she's like a first responder.
Yeah, she was dispatch for them, so she was sending out all of the medic and fire calls. And that's why she's Relay.
She is a relay.
We got some great stories out of Relay as well as from Xeno, but Relay we're going to have to save for a future episode.
Relay is who will be piping in when Relay pipes in, and let's hear from Xena.
I realize that the two of you have very similar tattoos.
I claim that I had the idea first, but he executed first, so I had to get a metric ruler on my forearm. We both have rulers on our forearms.
Yeah, and since I just use mine as a universal measure, it doesn't matter if I have additional tick marks.
See, I actually work for a living in the desert, so I actually need accurate measurements.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first accuracy third departmental pissing contest.
I've already opted out. This is great.
So out in the desert, around Burning Man, in the hills and whatnot, there's a lot of really interesting, weird little spots, including hot springs and abandoned mines and mines that are not abandoned.
Not that anyone should go looking for these things. You will get your ass arrested and deported out of Black Rock City if you do.
Right. Yes, you can only do this in the off season. And even then, it's a really bad idea because your car might catch on fire and no one will know where you are.
Yeah, it is. It is empty out there when there are people out there.
These simplest little problems that we completely take for granted in civilization become life-threatening within a matter of minutes.
Yep.
It is amazing to watch it happen. I had gone out for the last work weekend of the season because I could only get so much time off work, but I wanted to go there for the last hurrah. So I took a weekend off after coming back from the event. Went back out and met a girl. And I was like, hey, there's this really neat abandoned mine out in the middle of nowhere. And and she made googly eyes at me and I made googly eyes at her. And we did sort of the right things. We got an igloo full of water and we told people where we were going. And I went out and did some donuts on Playa and went out. And unfortunately, took a wrong turn. went past the gold mine. And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this road just kind of loops around. We can come at it from the other side. And so we were doing that. We're going down a particular road, and I was like, no, don't like this road. I'm going to go back to the last turnoff. And as I was making a little 3-point turn, a bunch of black smoke started coming out from underneath the hood.
Oh, no.
And literally within about 30 seconds, the entire cab was in flame. So yeah, me and her name was Canada exited the car pretty quickly.
Oh, no.
Which is, I mean, it's 30 seconds. I got some blankets and the water jug, which had spilled in the back seat after doing donuts, probably during donuts.
Because you had just filled a cooler with water.
Yes. Yes. We were like, we're going to the desert. We're going to bring 5 gallons of water because that's smart. Well, not so much. So I chose that moment to sit down on the ground and hug my knees and rock slowly and mutter fuck to myself.
I think that sounds like a smart strategy.
Yeah, it didn't do much for the confidence of my team member.
But it does help you get some of your own perspective on the event that you're dealing with.
I was doing a lot of thinking.
Yeah.
There's a lot of introspection. I couldn't quite externalize the thought process that was going on. So I think overall that was the best course of action ultimately, but it didn't look very good at the time. So after that, kind of wandered to the top of the nearest hills, tried to see what I could see. Turned on my phone, which had about 4% battery left, because I knew there wasn't any cell coverage, but I figured it would be the stupidest death ever if by some random strange chance there was cell coverage and I never checked.
Right.
So checked, there was not. And so it was night, so no one was going to be missing us and no one was going to be looking for us for quite a while. So we just kind of sat there and told jokes for hours. Tried to get some sleep. Woke up in the morning and, we're checking the time. We're like, okay, they haven't done morning meeting yet. Still not missing us. Once they do morning meeting, people will start to get a little suspicious. It'll be another hour and a half, 2 hours before they're like, oh, fuck.
And morning meeting is at what time?
I believe it was at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
But it's plenty bright before then.
Oh, yeah, and it's just going to start getting warmer from 7:30, 7:45.
I wanted to do a cutaway to explain about deaths in the Black Rock Desert, and I was like, oh, it'll be fun. And then I read all these stories about kids dying. Yeah, I was looking for stories about deaths in the Black Rock Desert, and I just found a bunch about deaths in Death Valley. Uh-huh. Every couple of years, tourists drive somewhere, car breaks down, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of miles of desert, and it gets baking hot. And people die. All their bones being found in a broken cab 200 miles from the nearest road. And it's just the article that I read about it was called Death by GPS.
Oh, Jesus.
And they wanted to remind everyone that your GPS doesn't work out there. Your iPhone doesn't know where you are. Your GPS doesn't know where you are. Don't trust it.
I think the reason we don't see more of that in the Black Rock Desert is because the Black Rock Desert is literally in the middle of nowhere. Death Valley is
There's
close to
stuff
Los
around
Angeles.
it.
It's close to Las Vegas. People go there.
It's a national park.
Yeah, Black Rock Desert is close to garbage. Other deserts. Some barren-ass mountains across which are other deserts.
So we went to the top of the hill, and so in the DPW handbook, at least it used to, I don't know if it still does actually, there's some really basic survival skills, like breathe through your nose, not through your mouth, because there's more surface area in your mouth for water to evaporate from.
Yeah.
So we're doing the things that you're supposed to do.
I learned that from the Fremen of Arrakis.
Dune was the proto-survival.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
That's my playa cred.
Pre-Mad Max, Dune was the real genesis of DPW
and Iraq before that. Yeah. Turns out. What's going on with your car at this point? Is that still smoldering?
So it burned for a while. The tires popping were loud and neat. The aluminum actually melted and formed puddles and rivulets. Cars have mirrors and whatnot, and in the explosions / settling / just heat and cooling, a lot of the mirrors had shattered, and so there are chunks of mirrors spread around the carcass of the car. So I just gathered one of those and went up to the hilltop. We kind of scoped out the area, and there was a road,
what you do is you catch the sun and kind of try to angle it such that anyone who's on the road, if their wandering eyes happened to point in your direction, they could maybe see some shiny, flashy light from a hilltop. Now, that doesn't help you at that moment. They're not going to stop what they're doing. They're driving in the middle of nowhere. They obviously have something that they're doing, going to work or hiding bags of meth.
So we're up there. I'm doing this thing, and then I hear some scuffling behind me and kind of panicking noises, and I turn around to see that, without telling me, she had started a signal fire in the scrub brush on the hill behind me, and that it had gotten a little bit out of control.
Well, they're going to find you.
And arrest us.
Well, yes, but
Oh no.
but you don't have to die in the desert now.
Yeah, there's that. But yeah, so I was in shoes with no socks, and she was in Crocs, and we were stomping on this fire, trying to get it out. And I was like, "Why the fuck did you not tell me you were lighting a signal fire?" And she said, "Well, your reaction to the fire last night wasn't great, so I didn't really want to bother you too much and have you go catatonic again." And I was like, "Point taken, but
Those are very different fires.
So anyway, we got that out, and we're sitting up there and, just signaling some more. We see this just broken down, just ugly looking wild horse. We're like, oh, that is a sorry looking desert beast. And he wanders around, kind of looks at us, and we look at it, and then we start wondering, is horse blood too salty for hydration?
I'm pretty sure that's what the Maasai do.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we were exploring all options at this point. We're like, well, I don't know, we could get something sharp. He doesn't look like he has much fight in him.
Right.
And he wanders down this little crevasse, and okay, whatever.
Can you choke a horse? I don't think you can choke a horse.
I don't know if you can choke a horse.
Can you choke a horse?
You have to have really big hands because you have to get your hands around them.
Oh, I was going to use
You do
my thighs. You weren't going to use your thighs? Lock ankles? Just squeeze? All right. So I'm the weird one. Great. Fuck you guys.
So about, I'd say 35, 40 minutes later, the horse comes out of that little crevasse and kind of wanders off. And we're like, well, that's an interesting note. Okay. We're going to go back to signaling at this roadway, which I might add, we can see little plumes of dust rising from. But as I'm sure you're familiar, the distances out there are really hard to gauge.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no way that we're walking towards this road off in the distance during daylight. So we're kind of developing a plan, okay, at night, when it's cool, we might be able to make it to that road.
Which is either 2 or 12 miles away.
Yeah, it could be 20 as far as I know. I mean, we were up on a hill and it was really far away.
Sure.
And then we see this little herd of deer. We're like, oh, cute little deer buddies, looking much better than the horse. Obviously had their shit together way more than the horse. And they come from a completely different direction, and yet they go back down that same little valley that the horse did. At which point, Canada picks up and says, those are very large mammals surviving in the desert, and they need hydration. And so we made an agreement that if those little deer buddies came back out of that little valley in 35, 40 minutes, say, we were going to go for a little walk. And sure enough, they did. And sure enough, we did. So we left a note on the car, date, time, direction, names, all the stuff you're supposed to, and an arrow towards the valley, and took a little hike down the valley. And we came to this fantastic site, which was kind of like a dug-out little pond area, but it was dry. There was a hose coming out of the ground aimed at the little dugout part. It was obviously for ranchers to water their herd or something. But the hose was not doing anything, so we followed the hose back up into a mountainside. There's a bunch of brambles. We're tearing at the brambles. There's no visible way to turn on any. There's a faucet. I have no idea how this shit works. So Canada got frustrated and quiet, which was scary. I was like, this is the beginning of where she drinks my blood. Okay, well, here we go. She'd been a trooper the entire time, and I was like, well, hold on. There's bugs. I'm getting bitten by bugs. So that's a good thing. So let's keep going down the valley a little bit. So we keep going down the valley a little bit, and lo and behold, there's another one full of water, and not only that, but running water. Not only that, but the hose was up out of the water and running.
Nice.
So
beautiful.
the stagnation issues and whatnot are not so bad.
Arsenic.
Well, yeah. I mean, we were willing to ingest some bad things at this point. So we take out our 3 beers that we had saved because we didn't want to drink them because your beer doesn't hydrate you, and we celebrated. So we opened the beers. We're like, hey, we got water. We can drink now. Let's get as shitty as a beer and a half can get us.
Which,
And-
while you're dehydrated and haven't eaten in a day
Yeah.
and stressed out, is probably fairly shitty.
Yeah, no, it was pretty good. Yeah. So we took our shoes off and stuck our feet in the water and started really kind of nesting. We were like, yeah, we can totally like build a little campfire over there and like we can fight off the coyotes with these sticks. It was like, if there's like 30 of them, they'll probably take us. But, we could probably take down a few of them before they swarm us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Make an example out of one of them.
oh, yeah,
to
yeah.
Scare off
where
the rest.
Where its head is a hat. So that was pretty happy. And then we heard an engine and a little orange flag waving in the bushes kind of came up close to us. And lo and behold, the gold mine that we had passed before was surveying the area for Native American sites of interest so that they could blow up everything around it. And so a surveyor came up, and Canada had soot all over her face, blue hair, kind of raggedy clothes, and this poor surveyor was on his lunch break in the middle of nowhere, and not expecting a panicky but smiling from ear to ear blue-haired, soot-covered hippie to stick her head into his passenger side window and say, "Hi!" So he dropped his sandwich, and eventually we were like, "Yeah, if you could, get us to a phone, that'd be great." And he's like, "Yeah." We're like, "But you work for the gold mine, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, the gold mine. They're not gonna like you." And we're like, "Oh, okay, well, but I mean, we can use their phone, right?" And he's like, "Oh, I'll just let me talk to them." I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." So he drives us to the gold mine. We wait outside. He comes out and he's like, "Okay, you can go in now." We go in and there's a little receptionist, and he's like, "Yeah, so these guys had a little car fire." And I ran into him when I was on my lunch break, and she just deadpan, staring straight at him, said, "Well, why didn't you leave him there?" Wow. And then she looks over his shoulder at us and goes, honey, I'm just kidding." She was not kidding. That is how I discovered that gold miners really are only there to just extract money from the ground.
Oh,
They
yeah.
give no fucks. No
don't-
fucks. So fortunately, my phone still had, I think, 2%, and I managed to get Cobra Commander's phone number out of it, and they let me use the phone. So I called his personal cell because I didn't have the office number, and he answered and said, "Hello." And I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he said, "Oh, pretty good. Who am I speaking with?" And I said, "Zeno." He said, "Oh, cool." And I said, "So, how's your day been?" And he said, "Oh, strikes and gutters. Yours?" And I said, "Yeah, much the same. A few more gutters than strikes. But I was wondering if you know anyone with like a car that could, give me a ride somewhere." He's like, "Yeah, I think I might know a few people."
Had they noticed you were gone?
Yes. Oh, very much so. Okay, good. There are protocols that once they get started escalate very quickly. Mm-hmm. Yes. It wasn't to the point where they were flying airplanes, but that is part of the protocol. It starts with just kind of they go where you say you were going, which we didn't get to, and then they kind of
Fan out.
They look around. After a certain point, they'll notify the sheriff, and that's when the sheriff goes to local bars and establishments, saying, "Hey, when you were driving to the gold mine from Winnemucca or wherever the hell you were driving to in your big old truck, did you notice any flashes from any nearby hills?" Which is the mirror that I was flashing at them. And that's when the people sitting in the bar that have had several beers and a couple shots go, "Oh yeah, I do remember a little flashing."
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long game, and the payoff is so far in the future. It's very demoralizing when you're doing it because you're like, this is not going to help until like 2 or 3 days from now.
Wow.
But you got to do it.
Yeah.
So how long was this whole ordeal?
Not long, about 14 hours.
So you didn't get to drinking your own pee?
No.
Did you get to drinking Canada's pee?
No.
That's probably best.
That was second date.
Yeah, sure.
Although the expectations for the second date were placed fairly high.
It's funny that Zeno knows so much about the missing persons protocol.
Yeah, it's really telling.
Especially, was that last year? Was that last year?
I believe that was last year.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another story.
Oh, well, let's hear this other story.
Okay. Yeah, missing persons is number 2. Apologies, I need to consider my audience. DPW does strike where we take down all of our stuff, put it into containers and trucks, and get it all stored. But there's still work that we have to do while we're not living on Playa. So we actually moved to a trailer park in Gerlach, which is interesting. But so we're in the process of moving all of our stuff from Playa to Gerlach when this happened.
And I work in the office, so I'm always by my radio.
The office in Gerlach.
The office in Gerlach, yeah.
That's great.
I had been jonesing to go back to Reno and just have a shower and then another shower and then a bath and then a shower.
Do you realize that nobody that doesn't spend weeks at a time out in the middle of nowhere on Playa ever says the sentence that they were just jonesing to go back to Reno?
Yeah.
It's like, Reno? Yeah, man, they got indoor plumbing. So much of it.
You just push a button and it gets cold.
I wanted Zeno to come with me, and he was like, no, I really, really want to stay and do more shade stuff because they really need me, and I like doing this work. And I was like, great, okay. And then I didn't see him for a little while, for a day, and then I heard over the radio, has anybody seen Zeno? But then it started to escalate a little bit more quickly than I thought it would, because I didn't realize, I think, that you had a previous missing persons experience.
I could have sworn I usually lead with that story. That's like one of my, first string stories.
Sure.
Yeah, so the day previous, a friend of mine who had been hit by a bus in Oakland and had facial reconstruction surgery had just finished her lawsuit and recovered fully. It had been about 3 years of this lawsuit where the city of Oakland was actually dragging her family's name through the mud and really just trying to paint her as the most terrible person in the world because she got hit by a bus and wanted money for it.
Stay classy, Oakland.
Yeah. So she had actually just gotten her settlement and had immediately come out to the desert, and it was her birthday. So we decided to drop acid and run around all night. Driving out in the deep playa, and the truck got a little bit stuck on a little rise. The rear axle got itself on top of some dirt such that the rear wheels couldn't get purchase. Mm-hmm. And we were just kind of trying to rock it back and forth and trying to do the things you do to get a truck moving again. And she wrote a note saying, hey, well, we left the truck, we're going this way. And she put it underneath the windshield while I was trying to dig out the rear axle. So there's a note on the truck saying, hey, we got stranded and this is where we went. I'm like, hey, I've done this before. I got this. Don't worry about it. But after some more digging, we did get the truck unstuck and, went about our merry way. And in the morning, I had not slept and was like, and it's my friend's birthday. She's finally made it to the desert after years and years and years. And she's like, all I want to do is go to Frog Pond for my birthday. And I was like, okay, we can do that. So I went to Frog Pond, and I guess someone saw the truck when we were in the back pond away from the truck and saw the note saying that we were stranded.
Oh, because you didn't take it off.
Because I was not aware of it. And also, I figured, we're at Frog Pond. We're obviously not stranded. We're obviously at Frog Pond.
If there's anything,
come look around Frog Pond before you start driving around the desert, panicking.
Like you'd leave Frog Pond to go.
I know,
into
right? There's a huge pool of water. It's disgusting, but it's water.
Oh, you'll get hepatitis from drinking it, but you won't die this week.
Right. People can live with hepatitis.
You'll get hepatitis
long,
from
rich lives.
Or lesions, or the year of everybody getting MRSA.
Right. So I had my radio on me, and we were kind of dozing, and I wasn't paying too much attention, but my name came up, and I heard, oh, I guess we better mobilize a search party, and, Frog Pond is outside the scope of where radios are supposed to work, so I was just, frantically saying, break, lifting my radio, no. I finally get through, and I'm like, no, Zeno's fine. Zeno's, don't mobilize, stand down. But, of course, I got a very big and long ration of shit for almost getting people mobilized again.
But far less than you would have had they actually mobilized. You're lucky.
And
your
found
radio
you
got
lounging at Frog Pond.
Yep.
The worst thing about Frog Pond is going there to hang out seeing all of the other people from all of the other teams hanging out there as well, just having a great time, chatting each other up, like flirting, starting to hook up, drinking gallons upon gallons of beer, and no one ever gets out of Frog Pond. It is fucking disgusting there.
The urine can only improve conditions in Frog Pond.
Yeah, there's a lot of strep. People get strep often.
Yeah, it's
in
gross.
Frog Pond.
But there's
Which means I think that they had to put it in their mouths.
well, yeah. I mean, you yell, and people are splashing. I don't know. But so there are other pools at Frog Pond that many people don't know about, which is why me and my friend were back there, was because when we got there, there was a very, very unhappy, unpleasant family with small children.
Oh, no.
Really insisting on being at Frog Pond and having good family time.
Oh my.
So rather than, hang out in front of these cheerful locals, we decided to go to the other pond, which I guess we should have left another note on the truck. But people wander off from work for a day all the time, and people don't freak out. It's just me.
Not everybody has a history of vanishing.
Not everyone has a tattoo of bad idea on their wrist with an arrow always pointing at themselves.
True. Most people don't.
I don't know if you guys know this. Burning Man's not cool anymore.
Oh,
We were
I'm
just
not doing
made
it
aware
to
of
be
this
cool.
at the BART station today.
Someone felt the need to come up behind us as we were leaving the BART paid area. A woman just like out of the blue, because Xeno's got a big patch on his back.
Sure.
And it's just like, Burning Man's just for rich white people or whatever.
Yeah. Well, obviously you
cool
haven't been, or if you did, you only hung out with your friends.
Right.
I think she was thinking about San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the
Francisco is
two
only for rich
are
white
getting
people.
very much conflated.
Mm-hmm.
It's just tech bros everywhere.
Oh, man.
So they couldn't just ruin San Francisco. They're like,
haven't-
wait a minute, where are you guys going? Wait, why are you running away? Wait, I want to come. There's like that really annoying friend in high school that just did not get that you weren't actually their friend.
Yeah.
Just followed you around to all the parties. And like the second they walk into the party, everyone rolls their eyes and goes, fuck.
Well, they can come, but they have to bring all their toys. They have to pay for
Right.
everything, and they have to play by our rules.
Their mom has to drive us to the pizza joint.
Yep.
Okay, Google, come on in. But we want drones. We want 50-foot flamethrowers. We want internet.
If we could have all of your old bikes, that would be great.
It's nice because, instead of the rest of DPW where you're like, well, I guess Uncle Larry paid for this, the bike people can say, well, other Uncle Larry paid for this.
Rich Uncle Larry.
Yeah, rich uncle, and then the drunk adult uncle. The weirdo uncle that just never quite got a job.
Yeah, oh, he's still wearing that hat.
Hey, he's got two hats now.
Yeah.
There's the one that he wears
Sometimes it's a
when
ball
he
cap.
doesn't want to be recognized.
Yeah. Drunk Beth, please edit this out. We do still want to
Yes.
interview Larry.
Thanks, Beth.
Drunk Beth.
Thanks, Drunk Beth.
Drunk Beth, who
Drunk Beth.
hates her nickname, Drunk Beth.
Drunk Beth is a saint.
Dandy pointed
and-
out the fact that she was exceptionally drunk one night isn't worth giving her a playa name.
Yeah,
but-
but playa
but
names
her-
are not like that. There's
No,
just
no,
random.
I get it, but her displeasure in it completely outweighs the fact that, like, oh, I've been so irresponsibly drunk. Like, not just on playa, but in my life as a human being who should have known better. And unfortunately, I wasn't there to give myself the nickname Drunk Beth.
Well, my nickname is Zeno, and I got that from BBS's in 1992. So I got to pick it, and I showed up at Burning Man with a handle because I already was in a culture that had handles, which is like underground, like hackery things. So I dodged that bullet.
Playa names can be a real hassle.
Yeah, no, I brought a friend of mine out there, and I named him Money Shot, and he didn't like it. He did not like it, but I like anyone being restrained, you just want to tell them, dude, don't fight it. Don't fight it. Just relax, buddy. Because if you fight it, it's just going to get worse. You think Money Shot is bad? We can go worse. Just fucking accept it.
Nose candy.
Oh, folks doing the wrong drugs on playa. Oh, that's sad.
Well, it is sad, but it's also a funny name. So
Sure.
Is there wrong drugs?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unequivocally.
Oh, I've done them. Yeah. Yeah, they're bad. Don't do them. So I got asked once if I knew where to get any hoo-ah. And I said,
Is that pussy?
and I said, I don't know. Could you tell me more about it?
Is that like Marines? Like, do you want to know where the Marines are?
And the guy was like, nah, man, come on. You know what I'm talking about. Do you know where to get any hoo-ah? And I was like, no, I really don't. I'm naked in Frog Pond with my friends, and you're a large man that just drove over the fence. And you're really scary, and you have a large Doberman, and you have a friend who's very scrawny, who has one arm, and is literally throwing a knife into the ground such that he wants to like get the pointy end down, but is failing every time. Well, buddy, large white-haired dude with the weird dog that's asking for the thing I don't know about. Let's talk about this, because my friends are freaking out right now, and they don't want to let you know. All right, buddy, what do you think hoo-ah is? And he's like, nah, man, come on, hoo-ah. And I was like, well, I'm going to say, no, I don't know where to get it because I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, no, man. And we had an empty, well, okay, so we had a cooler that had some beer in it, but no ice. At which point his friend came up and was like, oh, you have this cooler that has a bunch of warm Budweiser. This is before DPW switched to Pabst. This is back in the day when we actually drank Budweiser. Yeah, it's bad. So, and he's like, why don't you put your beer in my cooler? I got some ice. And we're like, no, thank you, redneck. No, thank you. It's cool. You know what? We were just about done.
That's downright presumptive.
I think we're going to go. And he's like,
That's like going into an orgy and going, hey,
can I
how
use that
about
condom?
your dildo, my butthole?
Right? And so, like,
Good
I'm like,
boy.
fuck, like, okay, my friends want to go. And the one-armed guy is like, hey, so why are you guys, like, not parked up next to the frog pond? And I'm like, well, you know, if you park next to it, it unsettles the dirt, and we're trying to pristine, you know, environment and trees, flora and fauna. And he's having none of it. He's like, no, fuck that. I own this place. And I'm like, I don't think you do. And he's like, no, I own this place. And he leaves and gets in his four-wheel drive truck and just drives over the fence and parks next to Frog Pond. And I'm like, oh, this is getting weird. Okay. And he's like, hey, I heard that there's a pond around here where you can, like, you know, jump and actually dive in.
Wait, he says this.
He says this,
The
yes.
guy who is
one-armed
pretending
guy.
that he lives here.
Yes, the one-armed guy who just
Okay.
drove over the fence, who has the friend who is asking for the hoo-ah. I assume they both want hoo-ah, but
Did you ever find out what hoo-ah is?
it's speed. It's speed. I mean, duh, it's speed.
Now, I really wouldn't have known that had you.
Oh,
not
okay,
said
well,
that.
so context is everything. When you're in the bumfuck Nevada and some rando comes up asking for something, it is speed. Doesn't matter if he says, do you got a dime? Do you got some grass? Do you have dirt? Do you have whatever the fuck comes after? Do you have? That is speed. You got the
mismatch?
I heard there's a place where you can dive in, and there's like a secondary pool right next to Frog Pond where it's deeper, and we'd actually rigged a little diving board. And I was like, cool, yeah, I'll show you where this is, while my friends who are naked and afraid get out really quickly and put their clothes on and like scurry off to their cars.
Because apparently something is happening now.
Apparently everyone's cool, everything's fine, but my friends are putting their clothes on very quickly. So I show him the other pool, and, you know, one-armed dude. And so he gets up like on this diving board and dives in and pops back up, and he starts just, you know, all of you people in podcast land, you have two arms, except if you don't, that's cool. But if you have two arms and you're used to swimming with two arms, just imagine if you're used to swimming with two arms, then all of a sudden you had one arm taken away from you. What would you do? So he just like windmills his one left arm that he does not know how to use. He's just slapping the water, really, but like trying to get back to the side. And I'm like, this is sad. And he starts chanting, whatever does not kill me makes me stronger. Whatever does not kill me makes me stronger. Whatever does not kill me makes me stronger. And I'm like, okay, buddy, but if you want a hand, I'm right here. And I was like, oh, fuck. I didn't mean if you need a hand. Fuck. And I was willing to help, and he did not accept my help. That's fine. He managed to muddle his way to the side, and by that point, my friends were clothed, and we're like, okay, we're going to leave now. And so we leave and go back to the work ranch, and we're like, wow, what a crazy story. So I talked to the work ranch manager, who is also the properties manager. Burning Man rents Frog Pond. Like when the dude drove over the fence, like that is we're leasing that. That's ours. So I was like, hey, so someone just drove over the fence of the property that we're leasing. So you might want to, I don't know, call someone.
Yeah, that's a thing we have to do something about.
Yeah.
now.
So he called. No one answers.
Sure.
So fine. Anyway, so the next day I'm like, well, out of my hands, whatever. And I'm doing my job. And I'm working building shade on the ranch. And at lunch, we go back to the lunch commissary on the ranch. And who do I see? One-armed dude.
Wow.
He's on the DPW work ranch, but he no longer has glasses, but he has a bandage on his head. So I look at him and I was like, oh, hey, how's it go? And before I get it out, his eyes drop away from mine and he walks away, not saying a single word. And I was like, oh, that's weird. So it turns out he showed up earlier in the day, went to the ranch manager and was like, hey, I only got one arm, but I can do the work of someone with 4 arms. And the ranch manager, he's game. He's like, cool, we get all kinds here. We get some weirdos. This is DPW in fucking 2003. If you're willing to do work, yeah, all right. And so he's like pitching his tent. And there's this other kid who is his first year at DPW too, and he's just pitching his tent. And they're right next to each other. And, you know, the little kid is named Sobe, which I don't know if you remember the 90s or early 2000s, but it used to be just a drink.
Oh, I drank me a lot of Sobe.
Yeah, it's cute, right? And that's what this kid was. He was cute. And so he's sitting there, and one-armed guy is pitching his tent, and one-armed guy is like, hey, so what's your story? And Sobe's like, I don't know, I just love Burning Man. What about you? I imagine that's what his name, what his voice sounds like, but memories are weak. He never came back, and I don't blame him. One-armed guy is like, well, here's my story. I used to be an Army Ranger. And the kid's like, oh, that sounds neat. And the guy's like, no, Army Ranger is like, that's a serious thing. Do you want to see my Army Ranger handbook? And the kid's like, sure. So one-armed guy like gets his Army Ranger handbook and hands it to him. Turns out the cover's been ripped off and it's soaked in blood.
Nice.
Yeah, interesting. And so the kid's like looking at it. He's like, oh, this is nice. And like looks at it, and the guy's like, "Yeah, sorry, yeah, there's a little thing on the. It might be blah. It's yeah, I killed a guy last night. Nah, just kidding. And the kid's like holding the book, and he's like, and the guy's like, nah, really, I did kill a dog. Just kidding. And the kid's like, you can have your book back.
That's
anyway,
as unfair
so
as...
I'm from Portland, and I just like Burning Man, and I wanted to help. It sounds like you're really interesting, and I'm not sure how to leave right now. Anyway, so he goes to like the powers that be on the ranch, and it's like, this guy kind of creeps me out. And they're like, noob, you fucking hippie. Whatever. You're just not used to hardcore motherfuckers. And so Will Roger and a couple other people are like, oh, we'll go talk to him. So Will Roger goes and talks to him. He's like, hey, so, what's going on, buddy? We heard, I don't know, you're saying some weird shit. You're kind of, I don't know, you're creeping some people out. What's going on? And the guy's like, what do you mean? You trying to kick me out of here? And Will Roger's like, oh, what's going on? And he's like, you kick me out of here, I'll fucking kill you too. I fucking killed a guy last night on the fucking side of the highway, you motherfucker. And just like starts threatening Will Roger, which back in the day, Will Roger still drank. And he was still like the guy that ran DPW. It used to be just one dude. And he's an ex-biker, and he's a rough dude. And a lot of the people on DPW were rough dudes. And a lot of people had a lot of guns. So at that point, Will Roger's like, oh, okay. It's like that. Well, you just calm down. It's all good. You can stay here. I'm just going to go talk to my friends over here. You just hang tight. And so he leaves.
As a guy with a posse, I will go check with my posse now.
And be like,
you wait
get your
for
guns,
a moment.
Dude. And so at this point, we still think the dude is just tweaked. He's just fucking stupid. I still had no idea this was going on. I was just somewhere else. All the people that saw him the night before had not related the story. So all the people that are operating on this guy did not know that there was a story of the last night. So we get a medic to come over and say, hey, it looks like you have a bandage there. Let me help you with that. And so he's like tending to this guy's head wound, and he's like, "Oh, this is a pretty deep head wound. Oh, it looks like you got clocked pretty hard." And the guy's like, "Oh, I just ran into something." And the guy's like, "Oh, that's a really nice knife." And one armed dude is like, "Yeah, it is a really nice knife. You know, I got it from blah, 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 blah." And he pulls it off his belt and he hands it to the medic. And the medic's like, "Oh, yeah, sweet." And he looks at the knife and he just holds the knife behind him while someone walks behind him and grabs the knife. And then he says, "Oh, that's a really nice Forerunner you got there. Can I see the keys?" And the guy's like, "Oh, yeah. No, check out these keys. Okay, so key. Why do you want to?" And the guy's like, "Okay, I got the keys. Okay, cool. And he hands it behind him, and someone walks behind him and grabs the keys, and now the guy's there with no weapon and no vehicle. And meanwhile, people are like calling the Gerlach sheriff, who at that point was a complete drunk. So I hear. I don't know. We could edit that out if that's a fucking issue. But as far as I know, the guy was drunk and was not answering the phone.
The name of our podcast is our waiver.
As far as I know. So we called Reno, and the sheriff was like, "Well, that sounds pretty fucked up. How about you just keep him there, and I'll be there in 4 hours?" And we're like, "Well, I guess that's how it is." Okay. So we're just sitting there doing a little song and dance in front of this dude, like, "Hey, stay here. It's all good. We're all friends here." And at some point, he's like talking to the medic, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, he pissed me off, and I had to. I mean, he came at me." And the medic's like, "Yeah, tell me more. What did he do? What did the dog do?" And the guy's like, "Well, I mean, the dog lunged at me, so I had to kill it. And like, you know, I stabbed the guy because, you know, he came at me because I killed his dog." "Oh, I think I need a lawyer." And then he just stopped talking.
Wow.
And then the sheriff showed up and handcuffed him, wrist to ankle, because that's what you do with a one-armed guy. And took him away. And all the people that were like making fun of the crazy dude that was talking a bunch of smack were like, "Oh, that's weird. And then all of us that were like at Frog Pond the night before were like, I think we just like met that dude like 2 hours before he died." Oh, this is. I don't think this is funny.
Well,
Yeah, it
funny
turns out-
subjective.
Yeah, and then
unfortunately.
they found his body on the side of Highway 34 with
Holy
the dog.
hell.
With the dog. And that's what people were pissed off about with the dog. They're like, "Well, he killed a guy. Well, whatever. Guys are stupid." Wait, he killed a dog?
Yikes.
You like how I started that story? Like,
No,
kind of
it's
calm?
intense. Yeah, no, it's,
I usually start it with like, "Oh my God, I met a war-armed killer." And then people are like primed for it.
If we're making mouth noises, I can get another pretzel.
All right. Let's for realsies now. Hey guys.
Hi, Beth.
Wow, that sounds really unforced.
Well, I was going to call you Drunk Beth, then I didn't because I know you don't like
Well,
it.
I appreciate your effort. So, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about Leo.
We're going to have a few stories about interactions with police.
Law enforcement officers. They're real. They're out there.
And they can give you a ticket for peeing in deep playa.
Yeah, they can.
But sometimes they're really nice to you.
And they will pull you over if you're drinking and driving or don't have a seatbelt on.
Oh, yeah, they totally will. And then they're probably not going to be really nice to you.
No.
Sometimes they still are, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
A bunch of these stories are about how they're nice to people.
Yeah, so today we're going to hear from Zeno and Relay, who you've heard from before.
And we're also going to hear from Foxtrot and Cream Pie, but also from Rex and D-Day, you and me,
Yeah,
the hosts
'cause-
of this little crazy podcast we got here.
Because we've been going for a while, and when you go for a while, you're going to talk to cops. It's just a thing that happens. Beth, have you ever talked to cops on the fly?
I had a friend hang out and take camera footage when a cop was angrily arresting someone on Playa.
Well, that's a very different interaction than any of the interactions we're going to hear about today.
Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
I have to say, of all of my interactions with the police, period, and I'm from Pennsylvania, where we've got some legendarily unhappy state troopers, I have largely had really pleasant interactions with the cops on Playa, even when I've kind of been being an irresponsible asshole.
I'll tell you this, I saw the cops this last year lined up along the Esplanade from the man to the temple. They were memorializing their fallen comrades.
And when we say cops, we don't mean it in a pejorative, and we don't mean just beat officers. The entire melange of Leos out there can be boiled down to the loving term cops.
There they were lined up, participating in one of our community rituals. They were honestly engaged with the temple for the purpose that we bring it out. They were supporting us in kind of a surprising way.
I will say it's always really uncomfortable to be out on Playa, experiencing the art and taking part in the community, and generally being a happy jackass. And then I discover that, like, I'm within a bunch of feet of somebody with a sidearm. That's always very, very sobering to me.
The nastiness of cops being what they are is not really mitigated by the environment of the Playa.
And we're not going to get into the politics of policing or how policing is carried out in these United States of America.
We all feel very ambivalent about them. They're real human beings, but at the same time, they're oppressive and awful, and they uphold a bunch of laws we don't believe in. But they're still people, and we want to like people.
10 principles also extend to the folks that come to our community to make sure that our community is safe and is responsive to the laws of Greater Nevada and these United States, which Black Rock City resides in.
Accuracy third, where our personal politics and our practical principles are sometimes at odds.
Often at odds.
And now we're all back on the same page.
So we were in a power vehicle, and we just backed out of Thunderdome, a family night at Thunderdome. So we knew that the lights worked because we needed all of them to get out of the 200 people crammed around Thunderdome. We're in the back of the truck, and we're going across Playa, and we're like, yeah, let's go look at the heliotropes. Great. And all of a sudden, woo, we see Christmas lights right behind us. We're like, what the fuck? That's so weird. So we pull over, and my ex was driving at the time. He gets out. And he gets out of the truck, and he's super responsible, and he's like, one of the only sober people on DPW probably. And he's like, hey, what's up? And it's this young buff cop, and he's like, you don't get the fuck out of your vehicle in a traffic pullover. You get back into your vehicle. And we're like, is it a traffic pullover if you're not on a road? Where do you think you are? And he's just young. He's probably like 24. And he's like, you don't have any brake lights. You don't have any rear lights. It's a staff car. Yeah. It's during event week. And we're like, and he's puffing up, and he's doing this whole thing, and then this older cop gets out, and he's obviously been to the burn like a number of times. This tall, skinny dude, and he walks over, and he's like, "Hey, how's your guys' night going?" We're like, "Well, it was going better before." And he like looks at the young guy, and he's like, "Hey, where are you guys going?" We're like, "Oh, we're gonna go check out the heliotropes." He's like, "Oh, those are super cool. Yeah, I saw them yesterday." We're like, "Cool." He looks at me, and he's like, "Do you have a headlamp that goes red?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he looks at my friend. He goes, "Do you have a headlamp that goes red?" She's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay, you sit there on the corner. You sit there, and you turn on your headlights and point them down. Now you've got brake lights. Have a good night." And he gets back in his truck, and he looks at the young guy, and he's like, "We good?" And he's like, "Yeah." And they get back in the truck, and they drive away. And then we go find the heliotropes.
Great. Tell us your story about law enforcement.
Okay, so this was one of the nights that I'd gone out by myself to have adventures, and I still remember what I was wearing, which was a skirt that I had put together. I had come from upstate New York, and I was sick of seeing all of the discarded gloves on the ground after the thaw every spring. So in order to not waste all of that good leather, I made a skirt out of it with like the fingers all flapping over my butt, and it was really cute. And I was out by myself, and I ran into this friend of mine that I hadn't seen in many years. And my first reaction was to tell him, "Oh, I'm just having this, alone night." I tried to do that, but he was in really bad shape. He had been sober for 9 years and had just broken that night kind of by accident. A friend had given him a bag of mushrooms, and he was in a really, really bad shape, just full of like self-recriminations and just having a really anxious, awful, awful time. So I said, "Yeah, of course I'll walk with you. Of course, I'll help you out." He was like, "Man, I still have the bag of mushrooms. I don't know what to do with it. If I have it, I'm going to keep using it all week. Like, please just take this from me. Do me a favor, because I just can't have this in my possession." So I said, "Okay, fine. I'll, hold this for you." And I like rolled it up and put it in one of the gloves. And we were walking along, and he was just pouring out his heart. And I was so focused on him that I didn't realize that there was a car that had been following us for quite some time at walking speed very slowly. I realized as it pulled up next to us, I realized that it was a cop car. And I had no idea how much of this she'd seen, if it looked like it was a, sketchy drug deal, anything. And here I am stuck sweating under the headlights with someone else's drugs in my pocket. It wasn't even like my drugs. And I was just freaking out, but not as much as my friend next to me, who was really freaking out, like wild-eyed, sweating, tugging at my arm, kind of freaking out. And I'm like trying to hold him still as the cop window is rolling down. And I'm going, okay, just keep it together. And this woman cop leans out the window and she says, "Look, man, I usually don't do this, but I gotta tell you, your skirt is so freaking cool. I've never seen a skirt like that before. Like, did you make it? Where did you get it?" And I'm like holding my friend still with one hand, and my heart is racing, and the only thing I can think of is these words that come into my head, and I just blurt it out, and I go, "No glove, no love." And, and she like gives this huge genuine grin at me, and she gives me an honest to goodness thumbs up, rolls up the window, and like rolls out into the night.
It's an interesting group of folks that very much want to be there and request that deployment year after year, and a certain number of officers who, for one reason or another, have it foisted on them.
Yep. Well, and I heard that they actually fly people in not internationally. They fly people in nationally to do training, cadets in, to train them on crowd control, drunken and disorderly, and like all the things that they will encounter out there. So you get this weird cross section of super cool folks who've been out there a couple of years who just want people to be safe, and then you get this cross section of like cadets just out of cadet school, and you're like, whoa, this is an interesting combination.
So you can call the cops and take that gamble, or you can find a ranger who is a part of the org, who is specially trained to deal with people who are having an awesome party and might need a little bit of help.
Yep.
Especially if you are having difficulties with your neighbors, who will be your neighbors for the rest of the event.
Oh, that's half of the job.
Don't
of
do
the
anything
Rangers.
fucking rash and call the police because people are being dickheads to you.
Do you speak from experience?
No fucking way, man. Well, IRL, I have had the police called on me any number of times because I have been having a great time, or I've just been doing work in the yard. But that's my own cross to bear. But man, like, you're all at a party. If you're having a problem and you don't want to deal with it, don't even deal with it yourself. Call a ranger.
Yeah.
Unfuck your burn.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
unfucking our burns here.
I had an experience with a law enforcement officer. Came up to me one night as I just finished a ranger shift on burn night. And I was back in my camp. My whole camp had left. And I was changing out of my ranger gear and getting ready to go out and have myself a good old time. And this cop pulls up right in front of the camp and gets out and starts walking right into the camp. And this makes me real nervous. And he walks right up to me and he says, "Hey, excuse me. What intersection is this? They stole the damn street sign."
That's awesome.
I had a BLM ranger roll up on me, one of those rangers that requests to come back year after year, has like done shifts in the cafe. I've seen him talking to like old-timey cafe management. And he rolls up on me because he recognizes me because I'm a guy with a big curly-haired bright green mohawk. And he's chatting at me, and I'm a little uncomfortable because I had been contrabanding some contraband, and I had said contraband behind my back. And he says, "D-Day, what's your opinion on medicinal marijuana and whether or not Nevada should be adopting it or shouldn't be adopting it?" And I was just like, "I really have no opinion on that."
Sir.
Yeah. And he goes, "Can you just pass me that joint and stop pretending like I'm some asshole who doesn't know that you're smoking pot on playa?" And he handed me a BLM deputy badge.
Nice.
And then he drove off with my joint.
Oh, that's how you got that badge.
Yes, that's how I got that badge.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have no idea where that badge is. It's a great badge.
I think I have 2 or 3. You can have one if you want. You talking about the little
plastic junior deputy ones, right?
Oh no,
No,
this
it's
one's
metal.
like tin.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit.
Oh yeah, no, they have a bunch of plastic ones, but they make a couple hundred. Like,
Yep, metal ones.
yeah.
Nice.
They're really good.
But out there, I forget that I'm wearing the deputy pin when I'm wearing it. And if I'm wearing a radio, no matter how asshole I otherwise look, people will treat me like I'm an officer sometimes. I do not
tin
look like
star.
an officer of the law in anything other than like a Mad Maxian, Judge Dredzian future hellscape.
Hey, you could have been one of their undercover agents who's been made. Just gave up on it.
I would never. And I don't look like someone who would ever.
Do you fellas know where I can get the dabs?
Oh man, that
Or
is
have
such
a
racket.
cheeseburger for my munchies.
Don't most
You
of those
know.
don't most of those lawsuits get totally tossed?
It depends on whether people fight it or if they just take a plea deal.
Right, right.
But there are lawyers without lawyers who will help you lawyer your stuff. So if anything does happen on Playa and you get nabbed or whatever, there is a team of burner lawyers who will be
Burnlawyers.net.
without borders.
Did either of you do the research on what we need to know about these lawyers that help folks out?
They're called Lawyers for Burners.
Lawyers for burners.
Yeah, the ACLU is also present.
I love lawyers without lawyers. Can they rename themselves lawyers without lawyers? Because that does my heart so much good.
Well, if you get a ticket from the cops and you call lawyers for burners, you are a burner with lawyers. Burners without lawyers need lawyers for burners, which is what this is.
Lawyers for burners, very straightforward.
Lawyers for Burners. Also, again, the ACLU sends representatives out to monitor the cops.
Google it. Chances are, if you are not, I don't know if you guys are from the 80s and 90s, but if you are not a pusher, chances are you're getting nabbed in some sort of coercive way.
Yeah.
And please, like, get legal representation.
Yeah, and if you are a pusher, don't do that shit.
Yeah,
on
stop
the
pushing.
playa.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a place for pushing or pimping or pumpernickel bread because
No,
that
it-
shit either stales immediately or goes moldy.
If you want to sell drugs to burners, sell them before the event, and we can all take our own risk.
They can all take their own risk.
Oh, that's right, because your hosts do not do illegal things.
Or go to Burning Man this year.
Aw.
It's fine. Man, I
Yeah.
have a son.
No,
it's
not.
great.
I mean, that part's great.
Yeah, it's not up to you.
Is your son going to Burning Man?
He will.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my! I
How could
so wish that I knew adults were doing this when I was a kid.
Right?
I had no
Yeah.
idea. To be fair, like I grew up in a really poor part of the country, and shit was really hard and really real for a lot of people, including my folks, for a while. But I had no idea that you could grow up and still play.
The ESD, the shack for communications is far away. It's
it's
not.
like
It's outside
outside
the
the
city.
city.
It's outside the city limits. So
So you have to drive in.
you can
You could
you
walk.
can bike or you can walk. I have walked, and 100% of the time I've been picked up by law enforcement, and which is good. They because I'm wearing a uniform, and so they know who I am.
Right.
They know that I'm essentially one of them, but not really.
Also, law
I mean,
enforcement camps, like their stuff is right next to the ESD stuff,
Yeah.
so they're going in the same
Yeah,
direction.
and so they'll drive you in and out, and it's not a problem. And they actually like to talk, because we're like one of the bridging groups of people that they feel safe talking to. That like they know that we know how to do our job, and we're not fuck offs, and we're at least sane part of the time, right? If there's a person in a yellow shirt, you can be damn well like 99.9% sure that they are sober, that they have their wits about them. My conversations with them, I'm oftentimes really sad for their experience because they have the unhappy job of dealing with the worst shit that goes on at Burning Man. And that's most of the time, if they're not looking for anything else and they're there mostly to work, that's all they see. And they don't often see the good stuff. And if you're dressed like a police officer, even if you're off duty, you're not going to be as lucky to meet genuine people and have authentic communications with them. And
Oh, absolutely.
so the majority of the people that I talk to, the cop wise, were just like, I don't understand why you guys do this. Like, these people are so terrible and they're so mean to each other and they do such stupid things. But they're still people from that county, mostly. Some of them are retired and they come back just for that
Right.
contract. But there are people that are within that county. And is it Winnemucca? No, I don't know the county.
There was
It's Pershing.
it's
it's
Pershing
Pershing.
now, and we've pushed away Washoe
And it's
County
Washoe.
because
But-
Washoe was the county that was like instituting all of the nudity laws and shit because they're a primarily cult-based county. Seriously.
In Pershing and Washoe, there really aren't very big cities.
No.
So these people, even though they're on their regular beats or whatever, their regular schedules, they don't see inner city type interaction. I tell people it's about the population of Bend, Oregon.
Sure.
So if you know, like if you go skiing or whatever, so a lot of people do. Bend. It's like Bend in the desert. It's pretty much the same spread of kinds of interactions, kinds of emergency situations.
Yeah, it's
that-
accidents and
We're almost a
domestics
college
and-
town.
We are essentially a college town. What you don't have are the emergency calls that come in for infants, and you don't have the emergency calls that come in for the very elderly, because we don't have those populations out there very often, if at all. So we still get heart attacks. We still get strokes. We still get some drinking related
altercations.
there's altercations, but I was mostly talking about the like medical stuff or it's a lot of dehydration and it's a lot of rebar accidents from people that drive rebar stakes into the ground and they're very sharp on the top and they don't bend them properly
Or cap them.
Yeah, so it's most of the same kinds of stuff that you would encounter in a regular city. It's those kinds of injuries. It's not
A lot less gunshot wounds.
Yes. Not, I mean, the cops do taser people.
I did have an interaction with law enforcement.
Please share.
Okay, so again, there was a girl. We're sitting on the Volare, which is a staff car, is a renowned staff car.
It's garbage. I mean, it's really, it works.
Yeah, they make it work every year. It's beautiful.
It looks like it's been in a demolition derby.
Yeah, it looks like that, but it runs like a dream.
It's the spirit of Burning Man.
I think you have to push start it.
No,
but
it
that's
depends on
fine.
the year. Sometimes you need to push start it before there was 70,000 people. And so we're doing this, and I'm sitting on the hood with this girl, and a friend of mine had given me a few pills, and I was like, oh, these look fun. And
Were they in the shape of Pac-Man?
No, they were just pill-shaped. And he's like, yeah, just take one of them. And I was like, well, if one is fun, three must be like 3 times as fun. So took all of them because I'm dumb. And
Or a grown-up.
right, I make my own decisions, Grandma. And at that year, I had 3 different places I was camping. So I was telling this girl, I was like, oh yeah, I'm camped over there. And I pointed, and over there, and I pointed, and over there, and I pointed really hard, and I slipped and fell off the hood because these 3 pills were no fucking joke, and my muscle control was a little off.
Woo!
And the car, the Volare, ran over my foot.
Oh.
Like the entire car with 20, 30 people on it over my foot. It hurt like a motherfucker. And I heard all these people freaking out. They're like, oh my God, man down, man down. And I was embarrassed. I was like, no, it's cool. No, never mind. No need to draw attention to the fact that I just did that. No, you guys just roll on. I'm good. I'm just going to hobble over to center camp, and I'm going to have this looked at. It's all good. Don't worry about it. So I hobbled down, and they're like, well, we don't have an x-ray machine, but we could wrap it up real tight. And I was like, let's do that. And they're like, well, we think you should really get it x-rayed. And I was like, I think I don't want to leave. And they're like, well, medically, we cannot compel you. And I was like, oh, no said, just wrap it up, and I'm going to go. Yeah, the second you say you can't compel me, I'm done.
Of note, though, is now they do have X-ray machines.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the power to compel.
I thought so, too. I thought they got all exorcist. Power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you.
Now they do have X-ray
So
machines.
that year, my foot was fairly fucked up. And that year, also, my friends that were building the man base were late. They were not done by the time the event started. They were actually working through Thursday of the event, which is super stressful and sucks a lot. That must have been 03. So I wanted to go check out the man base, but my hobbly, brokey-ass little foot thing insisted that I wasn't going to walk there. And I was like, well, I have a truck, and I have DPW stickers. And I was still hanging out with this cute girl. I was like, yeah, let's just drive out there. It'll be fine. It's the middle of the night. No one's out there. So I get in the truck and I start driving. The second I cross Esplanade, I see headlights, all pointed at me. I was like, God damn it. And so, yeah, I like rolled up. I just stopped the truck and got out with my beer. And BLM comes up. He's like, hey, what's up? I was like, oh, nothing. I was trying to, drive to the man. I gave him the story. And he's like, you been drinking? I was like, I got a beer in my hand. I ain't trying to hide nothing. He's like, oh, yeah? I was like, yeah, I took a pill or two, too. It's cool. And he was like, no, not so much. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, how are we going to do this? He's like, well, I'm going to write you up and I'm going to take you to Reno. And I was like, wait, what? And at that point, Black Rock City Rangers show up. And the two Rangers split off expertly. One goes to the cop, one goes to me. The one that goes to me says, shut your fucking mouth, and walks me away. The other one takes the cop and talks whatever ranger foo they have to the cop. And the ranger that's talking to me is like, look, you fucked up. And I was like, yeah, I know. I'm the one with the beer in my hand in front of the fucking cop. Yeah. I know I fucked up. Let's get to the point where you get me out of this.
I've been fucking up for years.
Right,
I am comfortable with how this feels right now.
I was like, yeah, this feels about right. Yep. And so he's like, look, we're going to have to do something so that the cop is mollified. And we're going to take your truck to D-Lot, which is the place where you...
Detention lot.
Yes, detention. Yes, it's the bad place. Me. So, like, this ranger's like, all right, so we're taking your truck to D-Lot, and you can't have it for the rest of the event. Like, that's just how it's got to be. Like, the cops are here, and you do whatever you need to do. And he's like, you don't need to drive for your job. And I was like, no. However, there is one small hiccup in your plan, and that is that I live in my truck. And he's like, well, you have some place to put it. And I was like, well, there's this girl that I've been trying to bang. I just unload all of my stuff at her place. So we do that. And he drives me to D-Lot. Meanwhile, the other ranger convinces the cop, no, this guy is vital to the operation of Burning Man. I am not even fucking close. I am a hammer monkey. I bend more nails than I drive. I am not vital whatsoever. But the cop is mollified. He ends up taking the, permanent shit on my record, turns it into a $50, driving on a dune, basically, when you're not supposed to. $50, not even on the record. I'm like, cool, awesome. So I get back, and turns out girl's not so down with me just moving in with her. Which I get. I totally get.
Sure.
So, unfortunate, nonetheless.
Right. And I'm like, I know what D-Lot is. I know where it is. And I know who the fuck is watching over it. So I just go to D-Lot, get my truck, and drive it back. And no one asks me a goddamn question. I just walk with purpose, like I'm supposed to be doing it, and I do it.
Even with all of the command and control between Burning Man and law enforcement at this point,
it just takes one volunteer that's watching D-Light that doesn't know what's going on. He's like,
not
I guess it's okay.
Track. Yeah, no, there's too much shit going out on there, and the plan is initially too anarchistic to ever put so much control on that, like, traffic violations are going to be tracked in that way. If there is somebody with, like, a half a pinky toe's worth of an in, you might as well be in the entire way.
Well, there was a funny challenge that when Gate started, like, there used to be very fewer departments.
Right.
When, like, it was Gate and Perimeter, and they're like, we got this. They threw down a keg challenge. They're like, we will bet DPW a keg that you cannot sneak anyone in past us. We won that keg within 6 hours.
Welcome back. This has been Accuracy Third, the end of season 1, post-released for prosperity, I guess, for better
For
sound.
posterity, we don't see much prosperity out of this.
For posterior.
This is the posterior of our season 1 recapitulation.
It'll be interesting for us to see if he cuts that out from the final
God
edit. Beth.
damn. I hate that I like it. It's so terrible. Oh, fuck.
That's funny. I hate that it happened. And so it happens. This episode was produced by Accuracy Third. We're Accuracy Third.
We are Accuracy Third. We produce all our own shit right here in the basement.
Yeah, all three of us edit shit. All three of us make music for this shit. All three of us, but mostly those two, do interviews.
And sometimes we have help from the outside. We've had a whole bunch of amazing collaborators ducking in and out of this project through its whole time.
Shit,
And
would you like to be a collaborator?
You can be.
You
the
want
new
a collaborator with us?
Yeah. Look, you know that you like listening to this. This is only a few hundred people. You like this much? You want to come make this? All you have to be is not wildly uncomfortable to be around with us, who are kind of uncomfortable to be around.
But not wildly so.
Yeah.
Not most of the time.
Yeah,
that's a point we haven't hit a bunch. This is a project that's primarily the three of us, but we've never envisioned that to be an exclusive shape.
And we've had incredible collaborators throughout our time of doing this, and we're super open to more incredible collaborators. Are you interested in interviewing your friends? Are you interested in talking to people about Burning Man? Fucking record it. Give it to us. We'll do this shit. Let us know.
Yeah, interview your friends, and we will edit those interviews into episodes, potentially.
Or
you can edit our interviews that we know should be edited into episodes.
If you're interested in editing or interviewing or
episodes
or podcast making
or the digital back end of this that we hack together or whatever.
Do you want to lecture
an
us?
ongoing creative project, and we'd love to have more interested hands in it.
Produce us on Discord.
Twitch us on the streams. Tick our talks.
Much like the organization and the event that we are constantly talking about, we are an open collaboration. If you're interested, come talk to us.
Do you crave attention on the internet or otherwise? We may be the friends for you.
All right. Have you been called to action? So here's your action. You reach out to us, accuracythird@gmail.com. You follow us on one of our social media channels, preferably not Facebook. We're only there because it hasn't gone away yet. Find Beth on Instagram, the Accuracy Third account.
Find
Day
Beth
both
and a
look at
bunch
the
of
Twitter
cat
a bunch.
pictures.
Yes. And share this podcast with your friends. Like and subscribe and review us on wherever you find it. And last but not least, if you care to support us financially, we're on Patreon. You can participate in the most transactional way possible, and there's little swaggy things and more content in it for you.
Yeah, we'll make new patches soon. It's almost Burning Man.
Soon. It's almost Burning Man. We're going to be fucking going to Burning Man.
You may become our friend. It's not true, but
it's not entirely out of the question that we will adopt you at Burning. But we probably won't.
We
don't
won't.
Be weird, but
and
we
please
might.
don't expect
we
that.
have.
But it has happened.
We do like burners a bunch, and we just aren't going to promise you nothing except that we are going to have a party at the party, and you can totally come and party with us.
We're going to go
and we'll be
Burning
friendly
Man.
and nervous and awkward and probably quite drunk. And you'll like it because we'll like it.